Yes, Mr. President, it would be an honor to respond. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I am very much concerned that, as I was telling the gentleman who said that he would like to clarify some things, I'm just concerned that I'm concerned that we as legislators must be aware of the repercussions of our being in a state where there is no declaration of a calamity, and what responses are now affected by this state, and if there is a need for us to do anything about it.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not unable to hear the entirety of the honor's privilege speech, but for the record, Mr. President, your Senate Blue Ribbon Committee is currently in the midst of its hearings relative to the wasted 44 million COVID vaccine doses, Mr. President. So my understanding coming from Her Honor is that there is a need to continue existing policies so that there will no longer be a perceived gap insofar as vaccination, implementation, and procurement initiatives are concerned. Am I correct in that aspect, Your Honor?
Actually, Mr. President, the point I was trying to raise is that when we are no longer in a state of calamity, the effect of certain provisions under various laws that we pass, these certain provisions will no longer exist. And one of those provisions, as His Honor mentioned, is the negotiated procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. This is how we have procured for the past 2 years. This is how we have procured our vaccines. I am not making a statement as to whether this is the best way to do it, if we should change it. I am more than happy if there are findings, if there are recommendations that we change the way we procure. All I'm saying is that everything that we have done to respond to COVID, we will not have access to those. We will not be able to act in those ways anymore because there is no law giving those authorities. So one would be the negotiated procurement, the others would be the vaccinators that were authorized. This would be the pharmacists and midwives. Otherwise, they are not authorized to vaccinate. So yung rollout natin ng vaccines would be curtailed because remember, we had to pull out doctors and nurses and we had to authorize these other health professionals. The other example I gave was the authority of HTAC because it was HTAC along with the recommendation of WHO that said even though we are just in phase 3 clinical trials, we will proceed. That was the practice all over the world. But even though it's a practice all over the world, we cannot do it here. There is no authority given. So that's all I'm saying, Your Honor, that we study this. So that if there are steps that we need to take, and there will be new steps based on new findings, then let's be prepared to pass those laws so that we can make those responses that are necessary. We don't have to be the same.
Yes,
sorry for the lengthy response, but I just wanted you to understand the context, Your Honor.
Yes, I fully understand, Mr. President. But is the foundational issue now clear that we are no longer in a state of emergency, or are we coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic as part of a global reaction after 2.5 years? That is no longer that we no longer have the pandemic right now, or it's about to end, soon to end.
Well, Your Honor, I can respond to that by way of legal definition that allows the responses that I mentioned to take place, that allows government to take certain actions. We are not, because it was not extended. The last one was Proclamation number 57 on September 12, 2022, and it expired in December 31. It expired on December 31, 2022. So yung legal effect ng pandemic, the legal effect of the calamity is done. But His Honor's question is right because WHO as the international organization has not yet made that declaration. Pero for us to act legally, it's not WHO. we passed our laws based on WHO and the determinations of our own government. So right now, we don't have it.
So Mr. President, am I correct in dissecting the premise that the legal situation can be summarized into 3 or 4 aspects? 1, the procurement. 2, the effect of the non-extension of the state of emergency insofar as the actions of LGUs and national agencies are concerned. 3, the operations of the government. And 4, the private sector. So if there is no extension, for instance, if I go to number 1, procurement. Even if there is no extension, bidded out or negotiated procurements will still be continued. I mean, they're not talking about bivalent vaccines, those about to be delivered, especially those for the pediatric COVID-19 vaccines, among others. So will her honor agree that even if there is no extension of emergency, of the state of emergency, the four that I specified would not be drastically affected legally?
I'm not prepared to respond to that, Your Honor, because the response would be different. It would be different as to whether it's a drastic change. We can discuss that. We can ask the expert, which is precisely why I delivered this privilege speech so that it could be discussed. For example, like the procurement. Not an expert on procurement. All I know is that our practice is based on Government Procurement Reform Act, which requires that there's a public bidding. So precisely why during the declaration of this COVID calamity, it was determined that it would be faster to do the negotiated procurement. So as to whether there's a better way, and now that we know all the suppliers and bidding is easier, I really don't have any personal, at this point I don't have a preference. I just know that in many cases, negotiated is the preferred manner to expedite the purchase. That's for the procurement. And the other examples I gave was like the vaccinators that are used all over the country, whether it's LGU initiated or national government initiated. The fact remains, the delivery of vital healthcare services were curtailed because of COVID. A lot of doctors were even became frontliners, having to deal with just vaccinating and handling emergency cases. So we can't afford to be putting them out. Studies show that there are so many cancer patients that did not receive their chemotherapy. There are so many dialysis patients that miss it. So we can't go back to that situation. We need to empower these vaccinators to do their job. Are there other ways to go about it? I'm sure there are. And having a hearing, and maybe DOH can suggest who else can be vaccinated. So again, I'm not saying that we go back to the way it was. I'm saying we need to be prepared, and in many cases there may be a requirement for legislation act to ensure that we are prepared. On the quick response, perhaps His Honor would know better because precisely the quick response fund is a quick response fund na madalihan i-access, no? So baka naman, hindi naman vital, kaninong telepono yan? So as I was saying, baka naman there is no need kasi, but I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert in quick response. That provision was in the law precisely to already declare, hindi na to pagdedebatihan, access for quick response for the purpose of a COVID response is already given. It's already available. They just have to ask for it. So in that sense, it also made the process shorter. Yun. And then, like the other example I'll give is yung benefits natin to health workers. Malaking issue po yun sa kanila. Again, I'm not saying that they should get it, they should not get it. I'm saying, if we are in the state of calamity and they are working overtime, exposing themselves, then it should be clear that we should get it. Eh kung wala naman, I also agree that wala, but there can be provisions in law that we put in that perhaps the department secretary, which we do not have, an OIC, can make that declaration. Parang klaro lang, no? So, yun lang naman sa akin, Mr. President.
Just two quick questions, Mr. President. Is the IATF still functioning right now? From the...
Pag sinabi kasing IATF, and this is just a light response,
Yes.
Secretary Galvez
Supposed to be on top of everything.
is already National Defense Secretary, and Vince Dizon is already in the private sector. And sila yung kilala kong IATF, plus of course, Yusek Borjeri, who's now our OIC. So, kung meron mang IATF, and I think meron, not heard from them, but I think meron, di ba? Parang meron naman eh, but I have not heard. I think they are busy with other things, which is good. It's a good sign. It means we're back to normal. But my point is, and that is my job as the in-house self-declared futurist, I need to ensure that we do our part in preparing for the future. Na prepared tayo to act.
Because, yes, Mr. President, because we used to have a daily briefing coming from an IATF spokesperson,
Yes.
updating the general public as the current situation, base of science, etc., etc.
Meron pa naman si DOH, Your Honor. I think they just speak as DOH, but I think I know DOH is a member of IATF. So siguro since parang we're not in that state of calamity, hindi na yung parang nakikita natin na live, diba, live broadcast, but I still do receive my updates.
So we still have a vaccine, sir.
Hindi ko alam kung we have a vaccine, sir. That I do not know. I just know that I know that the DOH gives update on the COVID cases.
What about, Mr. President, recognizing the expertise of the various LGUs? And LGUs under the local government code are empowered to declare their own state of calamities. So are we now saying that because of the absence of the extension in that state of calamity declaration, LGUs now are empowered based on the situation on the ground, whether to have their own local state of calamity concerning COVID-19, and it has now highlighted their functions under the local government code. Is our honor willing to accept that? That even though the national government is silent, the LGUs are still functioning.
Actually, Mr. President, that is an interesting idea. This representation always has an open mind, but being a lawyer, we are governed by laws and sections. For example lang, no, one example yung binanggit kong health emergency benefits ng ating health workers. That law specifically states that they would get this during the COVID-19 or other public health emergency of national scale. So they will not get that, I believe, under the local declaration of calamity. As to the ability of LGUs to authorize a pharmacist or a midwife to vaccinate, parang yata, I'm not sure if they also have that authority. On the vaccination program pala, sorry, to be very clear, the law that we passed, which allows these persons, these professionals I mentioned to vaccinate, it refers to a declaration that the period of the state of calamity by the President exists. So, meron ka specific yung authority na binigay natin, and effectively, this authority no longer exists.
But, Mr. President, I can still recall that during the midst of the lockdown, various local government units were in conflict with the national government. Cebu, for instance, would have its own COVID-19 policy relative to lockdowns, checkpoints, etc. The same is true with certain LGUs in Mindanao. So, is it now the appropriate time, given the relaxing attitude of the national government, to really, as I said a while ago, to really recognize the different LGUs as under the local government code again, under the general government code, section 16, the local government code, as to have that delegated power to implement what the national government now is not doing. So, in effect, there is no lacuna, there is no vacuum here. What the national government has been doing before has been transferred to the local government units, and the effect would still be the same. Sans, for instance, the benefits given to the nationally employed nurses, pharmacists, etc. But in terms of the effects on the populace, it's still the same, or it can be better, because the local government units would know the real score on the ground. Ilan na ba yung nabakunahan? Ilan pa yung nagkasakit? Sila rin naman talaga yung nagtrabaho. Sila yung humarap sa COVID-19. It's not the national IATF. It's not the vaccine stand, offense to them. It's the governor. It's the mayor. It's the barangay captain. It's the barangay health worker. These were the real heroes. Sila yung araw-araw na humaharap, nagbibigay ng ayuda, nagbabakuna. So President, my theory is this: kahit po nawala na yung policy, kahit nawala na extension, we should not worry because the LGUs are there. Section 16 of the local government code is being operationalized by the various LGUs. Am I correct in that premise?
Your Honor, Mr. President, our colleague made statements that the whole party agree with the LGUs for the frontliners in dealing with COVID-19. My own brother, Lino, former mayor of Taguig City, I saw through his efforts and the efforts of Metro Manila. I speak of Metro Manila only because I'm from Metro Manila, no? But of course the efforts of mayors and LGUs all over the country were very similar. Talagang literally buwis buhay, Your Honor. I have no arguments there. They deserve all the commendations. They literally risk their lives, no? You're right, Your Honor. Yung pagbigay ng ayuda na nagkagulitulo, LGU naman ang nagbibigay. Sila naman ang may alam kung sino yung kailangan tumanggap. I agree with that. But we cannot change the law, Your Honor. I'm not aware that the LGU, that the local government code, effectively amends our national laws that for health reasons only allow certain persons to vaccinate. No? I agree with this owner wholeheartedly that they will be the one to determine na, ay parang dumadami pa naman na, di ba? Marami pa lang na, ano? And then let's say internationally, mayroong bagong drug na develop. So can they procure on their own? Yeah, your Honor is correct. We have enough laws that allow them to do this. But Your Honor will recall, many of these LGUs also entered into their own contracts and they happen to choose a supplier, if I'm not mistaken, na ang tagal dumating. Dumating naman, pero dala ng supply and demand. Yung brand na yun na lumapit sa lahat ng mga LGU, ang tagal dumating. So like in the situation of Taguig, and I hope I'm recalling this correctly, by the time na dumating yung supplies to mga companies, pati yung Taguig City, the national government already provided naman. And in fact, months later, and perhaps our colleagues can have the same experience, tumatawag yung mga companies sa amin asking kung saan nila pwedeng i-donate yung kanilang vaccine na binili kasi nabakunahan na lahat ng tao nila. So I'm talking about private. No? But my point is, may role pa rin ng national here and I don't position myself as the expert. I just feel that this is ripe for a discussion. The national government can initiate it. It can be the IOTF that initiates it. Perhaps a hearing. That's why I want this referred to the Committee on Health. So that clear lang naman sa atin. What happened, His Honor will agree, will recall, on March 23, tinabaho natin, tinuyat natin yung bill natin on the declaration and the Bayanihan Act because we had to act urgently. Sana hindi na tayo dumating doon. Tsaka, we did our best, di ba? Given that the limited time that we have had. But yun na, we have lessons that we have learned. So I just want this to be studied carefully. We can probably have even a better response, Your Honor. His Honor is absolutely correct in saying that perhaps a lot of this can now be relegated to the LGUs. They had the opportunity to shine, and they did shine. They are experienced now. A lot of this they can handle. Pero siguro, Your Honor, like yung pag-analyze ng mismong effects ng which drug is better, we rely on the national government pa rin for that. No? And since His Honor, last point I want to make is has his own hearing on what lessons can be learned from these negotiated contracts, we'd be very happy for that to be included in the discussion. I just know that this is usually the path taken to expedite when procurements have to be done more rapidly.
I totally agree with Your Honor that the rites of passage, especially during those dark pandemic days, it's difficult, but I can still vividly recall and having opposed the tripartite agreement schemes being proposed then by the IATF. Sana nabigyan na lang ng greater roles ang LGUs, but lessons were learned. Perhaps we won't be facing another pandemic in our lifetime.
Actually, Your Honor, sorry to interrupt, pero the
There is
science
another one.
tells us that the chances of in our lifetime, no? The chances daw are highest. Sana nga hindi.
We have learned. We have told from some from the lessons, and I think the Your Honor is correct that there should be a standby authority given to the national government, and at the same time, recognize the role, the bigger role being played, supposed to be played by the LGUs as the frontliners. So, yun lamang po, Mr. President. I have no further questions. And I thank the gentlelady from Taguig for having raised again this very relevant current COVID-19 issue, which is still lingering in our midst. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.